Emma, 24, stands in front of her childhood home, Grandma's house, watching strangers move in. The smell of cinnamon from Grandma's baking, the soft quilt she wrapped Emma in, the old rocking chair on the porch, all gone. Taken by the family who should have protected her. Tears fill her eyes, but as she turns to leave, she spots something. A letter in the mailbox with her name in Grandma's handwriting. Emma had always been close to her grandma. As a little girl, she would spend hours in the warm, cozy kitchen helping bake cookies. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air, wrapping around her like a hug. She loved the way Grandma hummed old songs while kneading dough, her hands soft but strong, filled with years of love and care. In the afternoons, they would sit by the fireplace reading old books. Grandma had a special way of making stories come alive. She would change her voice for each character, making Emma giggle. They would read fairy tales, mysteries, and even Grandma's old diary sometimes. Stories keep memories alive, Grandma would say. Emma never forgot those words. But their favorite time was in the evenings when they danced barefoot in the kitchen. Grandma would turn on the old radio, playing soft, crackling tunes from the past. She would take Emma's hands and twirl her around, laughing. "Dance like nobody's watching, my love," she would say. Emma would close her eyes and spin, feeling light and free. The house was not just a building, it was a world full of love, warmth, and safety. Unlike the rest of the family, Emma never thought of the house as just property. To her, it was home. It was where she learned to bake, where she read her first big book, where she danced without a care in the world. But to her relatives, it was just a piece of land, something with a price tag. They never understood why Emma loved it so much. Grandma often said, "People will fight over bricks, but love is the strongest foundation." At the time, Emma didn't really understand what she meant. She thought Grandma was just saying something wise, as she often did. But now, standing outside the house, watching strangers move in, Emma finally understood. The love that built this house couldn't be sold. The warmth, the laughter, the memories, they were all still inside her, no matter what happened. But that didn't take away the pain. She had trusted her family. She had believed they would respect Grandma's wishes. But in the end, greed had won. They had taken what wasn't theirs to take. And now, Emma was left with nothing but memories. But just as she turned to walk away, something caught her eye. A small yellowed envelope was tucked inside the mailbox. Her name was written in soft, familiar handwriting. Grandma's handwriting. Emma's hands shook as she reached for the letter. Her heart pounded in her chest. Why was this here? Had Grandma left her a message? Had she known this would happen? With trembling fingers, Emma opened the envelope. And as she began to read, she realized something. Grandma had always been one step ahead. She had a plan. And Emma was about to find out what it was. After Grandma passed away, Emma felt like a part of her heart had been taken away. The house, filled with love and memories, was supposed to be hers. Grandma had told her so many times, "This house will always be yours, my love." Emma believed that meant she would be able to keep it forever. At first she didn't worry too much. She trusted her family. She thought they would honor Grandma's wishes. But she was wrong. It started with whispers. Quiet conversations that stopped when she walked into the room. Suspicious looks between her relatives. Then one day she overheard them talking. "The house is worth a lot. We should sell it before its value drops." Emma's heart pounded. Sell it? That wasn't what Grandma wanted. That wasn't fair. She confronted them immediately. "Grandma wanted me to have the house," she said firmly. But her relatives only looked at her with cold, calculating eyes. "She didn't leave a proper will," one of them said. "We have a right to sell it," another added. "You're too young to handle a house anyway," someone scoffed. Emma felt anger rising in her chest. "Grandma told me." But they didn't care. They had already made up their minds. They saw the house as nothing more than money, a thing to be sold for their own benefit. Emma fought as hard as she could. She begged, she argued, she even looked for legal options. But she was outnumbered. No one stood by her side. Days later, the papers were signed. The house was gone. Emma stood in front of it, watching as a moving truck pulled into the driveway. Strangers carried furniture out, her grandma's furniture. The old rocking chair where Grandma used to sit. The wooden table where they had shared countless meals. Everything was disappearing. Her heart ached. It wasn't just a house. It was Grandma's love, her warmth, her presence. And now it was being erased. The betrayal cut deep. These were the people she had trusted. People who were supposed to be family. But they had taken the one thing that mattered most to her. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of them. Instead, she clenched her fists, swallowing the lump in her throat. She felt powerless. lost, alone. Then just as she turned to leave, something caught her eye. A small yellowed envelope sat inside the mailbox. Emma's breath hitched. Her name was written on the front, in Grandma's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. A strange feeling washed over her. Hope. Had Grandma known this would happen? Had she left something behind for Emma? With shaky fingers, she opened the letter. And as she began to read, her heart pounded. Because Grandma had a plan. She had always been one step ahead. And Emma was about to find out the truth. Emma's hands trembled as she opened the letter. The familiar curves of Grandma's handwriting filled the page, making her heart ache. It felt like Grandma was right there, speaking to her from beyond. My dearest Emma, if you are reading this, it means things have happened exactly as I feared. I always knew that some people in this family cared more about money than love. But don't worry, my sweet girl, I have taken care of everything. You were always meant to have this house, and I made sure no one could take that away from you. Follow my instructions carefully. Trust only yourself. And remember, love is stronger than greed. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Grandma knew. She had seen this betrayal coming. And she had planned for it. At the bottom of the letter there were 3 things. 1. A small rusty key. 2. The name of a lawyer. 3. A final message. Look inside the old sewing box. Emma's heart pounded. The sewing box. It was one of Grandma's most treasured possessions, always kept on the top shelf of her bedroom closet. Emma had played with the colorful spools of thread as a child, never thinking it could hold something important. She didn't waste a second. She rushed to her aunt's house, where some of Grandma's belongings had been stored. Sneaking past her arguing relatives, she found the box tucked away in a dusty corner. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside, among the old buttons and threads, was a small folded piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully. It was a legal document. Her eyes widened as she read it. Grandma had secretly transferred ownership of the house to her long before she passed away. It had been done in private with the help of the lawyer whose name was in the letter. Emma gasped. This meant that the sale was illegal. Her greedy relatives had no right to sell the house. She clutched the paper tightly, determination burning in her chest. Grandma had protected her after all. She had made sure the house would stay where it belonged, with Emma. Now she just had to prove it. The next morning she went straight to the lawyer's office. The elderly man greeted her with a knowing smile. I was wondering when you'd come, he said. Your grandmother told me you would be strong enough to fight for what is yours. Emma handed him the document and the lawyer nodded. This changes everything. Within days, legal action was taken. The sale of the house was reversed. The new owners were forced to leave and her relatives were left in shock. They had thought they could steal from her. They had thought greed would win. But Grandma had outsmarted them all. As Emma walked back into the house, she felt a wave of warmth wash over her. The scent of cinnamon still lingered in the air. The rocking chair creaked softly as if welcoming her home. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. Thank you, Grandma, she whispered. She had lost her, but she had never truly lost her love. And now she had her home back, just as Grandma had always planned. Emma stood outside her relative's house, gripping the legal document tightly in her hands. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. They had stolen her home. They had betrayed her trust. And now they were celebrating their victory, thinking they had won. But they had no idea what was coming. She walked up to the door and knocked firmly. Voices inside went silent for a moment before someone swung the door open. Her aunt, dressed in fancy clothes, looked surprised to see her. Oh, Emma, she said with a fake smile. You look tired, dear. You really should move on. The house is gone now. Emma clenched her jaw. She could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses behind her aunt. The whole family was inside, celebrating. Move on? They thought they could take what was hers and walk away without consequences? Emma pushed past her aunt and stepped inside. The room went silent as her relatives turned to look at her. Her uncle, sitting in a big chair, smirked. If you came here to argue again, don't waste your time. The house is sold. It's over. Emma took a deep breath, then held up the paper in her hand. Actually, she said, her voice strong, it's not over. In fact, it's just beginning. The smirk on her uncle's face faded. What is that? Her cousin scoffed. Emma unfolded the paper slowly, letting them all see the official seal. This, she said, is proof that the house was never yours to sell. Her aunt's face paled. What are you talking about? Emma stepped forward, locking eyes with each of them. Grandma saw this coming. She knew some of you would try to take the house for money. So before she passed, she made sure to transfer the ownership directly to me. This document proves it." A stunned silence filled the room. Her uncle jumped up. "That's impossible. We sold it." "The paperwork." Emma cut him off. "The sale is illegal. The lawyer has already confirmed it. The house was mine before you ever signed those papers. That means the deal is void. The new owners will have to leave and you," she pointed at them all, "you will get nothing." Her aunt's hands shook as she grabbed the paper, reading it over and over. But there was no way to change the truth. Grandma had outsmarted them. Then, Emma pulled out another document from her bag. "Oh, and that's not all." Her uncle snatched it from her hands and scanned the page. His mouth fell open. It was a trust fund. Grandma had secretly set aside a large sum of money, only for Emma. If anything happened to the house, if the family tried to take it from her, Emma would still be financially secure. "She planned for everything," Emma said, her voice steady. "She made sure I would never be left with nothing. No matter what you did." Her cousin, who had laughed at her before, was now red with anger. "This isn't fair." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, now you care about fairness?" Her aunt collapsed into a chair, rubbing her temples. "So what happens now?" she asked weakly. Emma straightened her shoulders. Now I go home. To my house. And you? You live with what you did." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked out. As she stepped into the cool night air, she felt something deep inside her, a feeling of peace. Grandma had always told her, people will fight over bricks, but love is the strongest foundation. And now, Emma finally understood. Grandma's love had built something no one could take away. Not a house. Not money. But strength. And as she walked back toward the home that had always been hers, she smiled. Because in the end, love had won. Emma stood outside, the cool night air wrapping around her like a gentle embrace. The house, her house, stood before her, quiet and still. The battle was over. Whether she had reclaimed it or lost it forever no longer mattered as much as she once thought. Because now she understood something deeper. Grandma's love had never been about bricks and walls. It wasn't in the furniture, the old rocking chair, or even the smell of cinnamon that once filled the kitchen. It was in the lessons she had taught, the warmth she had given, and the strength she had passed down. And that love. It was still here. Emma took a deep breath, staring up at the stars. She remembered all the times she and Grandma had sat on the porch, watching the night sky. "Look at the stars, Emma," Grandma would say. "No matter where you are, they're always there. Just like love, it never truly leaves." Tears filled Emma's eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from understanding. She closed her eyes, letting the memories flood back. The laughter as they baked cookies together. The stories whispered late at night. The soft hum of Grandma's voice as she danced barefoot in the kitchen. Grandma had always known this moment would come. "You always knew, didn't you, Grandma?" Emma whispered. The wind stirred gently, rustling the trees. And then, so faintly she almost didn't believe it, she heard it. A soft creak. Her heart stopped. She turned, eyes wide, staring at the porch. The old rocking chair, the one Grandma used to sit in, swayed just the tiniest bit, as if someone had just risen from it. A shiver ran down Emma's spine. But it wasn't fear. It was warmth. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it was just her imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, Grandma was still there, smiling. Emma wiped her tears and let out a soft laugh. "I'll be okay, Grandma." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. Because love, the kind Grandma gave, was the strongest foundation of all. And that would never fade.